So let's get into it. Let's talk about how to shop for cars and go down the whole gambit.
Okay, so yeah, like we said, buying cars is scary, right? So we want to make sure that one, we create an environment that is where people are informed when going in to buy a vehicle, and this is not just going to help the consumer, but it helps the dealership in the process also. So this is not like trying to put one against the other, right? That's a big mistake I think people make when they go into a dealership. They go in with their guard up, right? They have that conversation in the car, like, "Hey, listen, we're only going in to look, right? We're not going to buy anything today," and they kind of like gear up for doing battle. And I think sometimes that can create a pretty challenging experience for both the salesperson and the consumer, right? So one thing I tell people all the time is be open-minded, right? Years ago, things were different. And unfortunately, in some stores, they haven't changed in the sense that salespeople kind of do things like they used to do, and they're looking to get over on people. But for the most part, that's not the case, right? People want to help you buy a car, and you're there to buy one, right? But unfortunately, if we set the tone and we go in aggressively and be confrontational, then what does the salesperson do? He becomes confrontational back. Or sometimes the salesperson's confrontational and you become confrontational. And what I would recommend is if you are in a situation where you're at a dealership and for some reason you're not clicking or vibing with the salesperson, listen, you're in control, right? You're the customer, you're there to buy the product. If you're not happy with the experience, feel free to say, "Hey, listen, you know what? This isn't really, I don't think we're connecting, we're vibing at this time. Can I speak to somebody else?" Maybe ask to speak to a manager and ask for another salesperson, not in a confrontational manager, but listen, trust your gut. If you feel you're not having the best experience with the dealership or the salesperson, be comfortable asking for someone else to help you out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I've worked in plenty of dealerships, and I actually haven't done that. I've actually just left the dealership because I didn't like the way that the person that got introduced to inside of the space was conducting business. So yeah, that is true.
So again, that hurts you and the dealership, right? So nobody benefits from that. So I think being, if you're in a restaurant and you're not happy with food, right? You're going to be like, "Hey, you know what? Just send it back or whatever, or ask for something else," right? So same thing in a car dealership. Understand that's not a bad thing to do that.
Okay. All right. So I know you're big on, being prepared when you walk into the dealership, right? So what does that mean?
So you got to do your research. Going into a dealership and you're not familiar with, let's say, the product or the programs that they have, or what a car may go for, right? I have a lot of people that call up for a vehicle and they'll say, "Hey, I'm looking for this particular car." And then when they get a payment, they're like, "Whoa, like I had no idea it was going to be that much money," right? Cars have gone up in price, right? Whether you're leasing or financing, interest rates are really high right now. So you want to do some research before you go to the dealership, right? Make sure that there's so many websites, Car Gurus, there's CarMax, there's all these different places where you can get information nowadays about vehicles. So do your research, compare different vehicles. If you're in the market for, let's say, an SUV, listen, everyone makes a great car nowadays. And that's one of the things I think the pandemic did, was it opened the mind of the consumer, where let's just say, I've always purchased whatever, Mercedes-Benz vehicles, right? And during the pandemic, all of a sudden you saw these crazy increases in prices, and people said, "Wait a minute, let me see what my options are." And then they realized that, hey, there are other brands out there that make great products. So do the research. If you're looking for an SUV, be open-minded to other options. Like I said, be prepared. Read the reviews, check out the quality ratings and things of that nature before going into the dealership.
How important is it to, number one, check resale value before you're going into this process of saying I'm going to buy or lease a vehicle?
So that's a huge factor, right? Now that depends if you're going to be leasing or buying the vehicle. Now on a lease, the resale value is important because the leases are based. So on a lease, you pay the depreciation, right? Whatever the vehicle loses in value. So if the vehicle has a higher resale value, typically has a higher resale value, that's going to shrink your monthly payment. So that's important. Now, if you're going to be financing a vehicle, same thing. You want to make sure that vehicle holds value. So I tell this story all the time to people. if you're buying two cars, right, there is no right or wrong as far as leasing. Some people ask me all the time, what's better, leasing or financing? To me, it's all based on personal preference. What are you using the vehicle for? How long do you keep the vehicle? Those things play a part. Are you driving a lot of mileage? Things like that. So making sure you understand what the resale value of the vehicle is key, because if you're going to make this long-term investment in financing a vehicle, you want to make sure that it's going to hold its value.
Now, this is important, Chris, because we talk about preparation, and this is coming off the heels of our last how-to, which was understanding your credit score. A lot of people don't realize how important credit is in trying to get a car. So talk about that, like the importance of it. What numbers are the dealerships looking for? How that impacts your interest rates, things like that.
Okay. Big conversation we have with a lot of clients right now about their interest rates. Some people use, like, let's say Credit Karma, or these different apps to kind of see what their what their credit score is. I typically find if you go to Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, you can get a more accurate score than using these other companies, right? So how that works. So the bank looks at it as, all right, I'm going to be lending this person money for a vehicle that essentially the bank is buying, right? The bank is going to buy the vehicle from the dealership. They're going to loan you money, and you're going to be paying off that loan to them. So think about it this way. If someone was borrowing money from you and you looked at their credit score, that would kind of give you an indication of how likely they are to pay back that loan. Okay. So now if somebody has a lower credit score, or has a payment history that's not, you see they've missed some payments, you may still lend them the money for that car, but you have more risk in the game, right? So then there's a chance, you could see by their history, they may not be apt to paying it back, or paying it back on time. So I might give them a higher interest rate. Now that's going to increase their monthly payment. So now I'll tell you, during the pandemic, things changed drastically. But you're starting to see it kind of settle itself out now, where used car rates right now are anywhere between 7 and 14%. Okay. Ooh. New car rates I've seen as low as 3.9, 4.9. Last year, Ford had a 0% interest for 36 months on a new car. So that was unheard of 3 or 4 years ago, right? So you're starting to see it come back a little bit. So again, doing your research, very important. You can go online. If there's a particular vehicle you're looking at, you can go online to that company's website. Let's say it is Ford, and you can see what specials they have available, and they'll show you the interest rates. Now, remember, you have to qualify for that. So if you have the credit score needed, then obviously that applies to you. If not, you'll have different tiers that will bring your credit score up.